Hello everybody, Prepper003 here today with another topic that I know a lot of people are really invested into, and that is the budget rifle versus the high-end rifle. Now, I know that there's a lot of talk about this, there's a lot of debate on it, and a lot of people have their own opinions on it, including myself. Now, I'm going to kind of go at it from a point-by-point aspect rather than just a straight-up opinionated advice. But right now I'm going to start off with pretty much the budget rifle. And right now, as an example, I have right here for a budget rifle, and this one right here is just a Bushmaster XM15 ES2. Just a basic $650 rifle. Now, this right here, as you see it, is just pretty much a standard setup. There's nothing too fancy about it, there's nothing too high speed about it, and there's not a lot of extras that come with this rifle as it says. Pretty much the two basic things that I added to it was an ambi mag release and a ambi safety to it. So that's just pretty much the biggest things I added to it, besides a different trigger. But the main two things was the ambi safety and the ambi mag release. Those were the biggest things. But that's pretty much a basic standard setup as it is right here. I'll just keep it right there so you guys can see it. But the biggest thing that you'll see with your standard setups is there's not a lot of things that you have to add to them, but a lot of people will add stuff to later on. And I'll talk about that later on in the video. But now we're going to go on to the second point, besides just a bare bones setup that you're pretty much going to be getting with your standard budget items. Sometimes they might not even have a rear sight, depending. This one right here is a fixed carry handle, so it does have the iron sight with it. But the next thing you're going to be doing is you're going to be lacking their comfort items. And what I mean by that is you're not going to have a nice rubberized textured grip, a nice buttstock to it, a free float forearm, or a quad rail on it, depending on it. You're not going to have a nice muzzle device. You might have a standard A2, depending, or you might have a standard comp. So just kind of have to go by what you're looking for. But you're also going to be lacking those things. For the most part, you're not going to have a nice fancy trigger into it. You're going to have pretty much a basic setup similar to this one right here. And this is another bare bones setup, but this one doesn't have anything too fancy with it, just a standard safety, no ambi controls to it, standard buttstock, standard grip, standard mil-spec trigger, and standard front sight. So just another example of a bare bones setup here. There's nothing too fancy about it at all. So that's just what you have to kind of realize, is just that all those nice comfort items that you get with your high-end rifles, you're not really going to get with your bare bones basic rifle. Which is going to lead into the next point is that you're more likely to add upgrades to these rifles. So you're going to most likely add on to that stock, that grip, that trigger, that hand guard, and everything else. And a lot of those are really nice, but they're not necessarily needed, depending on the role you want that rifle to fill. Now, if you're wanting that rifle to be a really nice precision rifle, you may have to add in some of those extra things as well. But for just a basic rifle, you might not need all of those extra add-ons and everything else. The next point about it is going to be your non-mil-spec parts. I know a lot of people say, well, mil-spec is just the best item to the lowest bidder. That is true, but these non-mil-spec parts are even lower grade than that. So what's going to happen is they're going to wear much more quickly, and you're going to have to replace them over time, depending on how high of a round count you're putting those rifles through. Now, if it's just a range toy and you want to take it only to the range on like the 4th of July or Independence Day, well, they're the same day, or just something like that, just where it's pretty much just a toy that you're only going to take out to the range and put a couple hundred rounds through it the entire year, that's just one kind of thing that you have to put into the thought process on that, is just what you're looking at doing with the rifle. Now, if you're looking at maybe it being a 3-gun competition rifle, a patrol rifle, or a SHTF rifle, you're looking at practicing with it on a regular basis, you're looking at putting those high round counts to it, you may want to have better internal parts with it, or at least upgrade those parts to be into a more upper par grade than your basic non-mil-spec parts. Now, the last thing I'm going to get onto is going to be something I know a lot of preppers do, and that's prep for their family and for their prepper group. So they'll buy a lot of rifles and a lot of equipment for those people that can't afford it, just to have those things on hand, or have a lot of those just in case one breaks, they can fall back to the next one. So what that gets into is quantity over quality. And what do I mean by that? Well, you can buy 5, 6 of these right here, of these basic setup rifles, instead of spending the $3,000 on a rifle like this right here, or $3,500 depending, and then adding on the extras onto that rifle as well. So it just comes down onto what do you want to do with that, and how much money or how many rifles do you want to have. So it just comes down to that, and it comes down to how you're wanting to look at it, and how you're wanting to set yourself up. Now I'm going to go on to the high-end aspect. Now, right here I have pretty much, it's more of a shop-built one, but it's pretty much a LWRC M6 IC lower with an FN upper. So right now it's not a straight high-end rifle, but it is pretty much a more costly setup comparable to some of your high-end rifles than like the standard Bushmaster that I showed you earlier. And what I mean by that is this thing right here pretty much costs 4 times as much without even adding on to the optic, the light, and the laser accessories. So a lot of that is going into the comfort item stuff. Like I said, this one does have the ambi trigger, ambi bolt release on both sides, and then it has the ambi mag release, flared magwell, nice guys leash trigger into it. So right there you're already getting into the extra cost. Then you have the nice buttstock on it as well, nice pistol grip, so quad rail. That's just a lot of the things that you're already getting into the extra cost of it. So that's what I meant by earlier, is you're getting into the custom stuff and the more comfort items. Now I'm going to go into some of the more points on the high-end rifles. Now, over your basic standard setup, a lot of your high-end rifles are more modular. A lot of them have free float rails already installed on them. A lot of them, like this one right here, already had a nice trigger installed. They have a better buttstock onto it. They have like a quad rail right here, so I can attach more things to it, like my light and laser, rather than a standard delta rail on that one, or just your standard handguard. So that's just one of the things you're going to have to think about, is just that these ones come more ready to go right off the top than you having to go and buy extra stuff for it. So that's just one thing, and those extra parts do come into a costly accumulation of funds really quickly. So now on to the better parts. Now what I mean by that is you're going to have better barrels for it, like this one right here is a nice 1-in-7 chrome lined FN barrel, as the Bushmaster is a 1-in-9 non-chrome lined barrel. So what I mean by that is that's just, this one right here is more likely to hold up to a higher round count than the Bushmaster. Then this one right here, as I said earlier, does have the FN upper, so it does have a FN mil-spec MP HP tested bolt. So it's going to be able to, well, it's better inspected. The metal is more standard and upholding than your basic Bushmaster or some of your other budget rifles, to where like your cam pin can break more easily. These ones right here are just going to have that better metal, and they're also going to have that better inspection and quality control over your standard batch control for like your Bushmasters and things. So that's just one thing that I think is kind of notable, is that the parts are going to be much better made. They're going to be made out of higher quality metal, so you're just going to be able to rely on that product a little bit more easier than you would for your standard budget. Now, with that and having onto those extra parts and everything is that they're going to be able to hold up and handle a lot more abuse. And what I mean by that is like for those of you that are looking to have it as a SHTF rifle or as a patrol rifle, maybe for some of you law enforcement or military, those parts are going to be able to hold up for you, and they're going to be able to take a lot of that more duty abuse or training abuse, 3-gun abuse, just those high round counts, and the handling abuse they're going to be able to get to be able to be putting it through the environments and being able to still rely on that rifle rather than having to worry about parts breaking on or having to worry about it jamming a lot. So, and a lot of you guys in the military know that a lot of those rifles have a high round count to them, and whenever you get them issued to them, they're already heavily worn down. So that's where you're starting to get into that parts where you're having springs wear down, you're having things not work properly, so you can kind of had experience with having those parts already breaking on you after that high round count than you would with the more budget end rifles, to where they're going to be breaking on you at a much quicker rate. So that's just one thing to get to it. Now the last thing about it is that you're going to have a less likely need to upgrade on these rifles. So what I mean by that, you're not going to have to feel like you're going to need to change out gas blocks, change out hand guards, change out trigger units and everything else, because that's already been done to you from the factory. They're already ready to go. So that's what I mean by earlier with that more modular over standard setup, is just that you're going to be able to be ready to go right out of the box. And you're not going to be looking at spending that extra money on the rifle. You can maybe put that into training ammunition, towards magazines, towards optics, and other things like along those lines, maybe even towards a chest rig or something, than having to spend the extra couple hundred, maybe 500. I've even seen some people put $1,000 into a budget rifle just by adding on a couple of things onto it. So that's just the points I want to make on between the budget rifle and the high-end rifle, is just that there's a couple of different things about it that it comes down to, and it comes down to what you're wanting to do and pretty much your basic funds. Now the last thing I wanted to touch on is just if you're wanting to look at the quantity over quality, I would suggest instead of getting 5, maybe getting 2 of your setups, like I had right here with that basic Troy and then that Bushmaster, and then getting 1 heavy-duty high-end rifle that you know is going to be able to hold up to a lot of abuse. So that's just something I just wanted to say and what I wanted to point out. So thank you. I really appreciate it. I want to hear your guys' opinions down on below and what you guys think of between the budget and the high-end, and if the extra cost of the high-end rifle is worth it over the lower cost of the budget-end rifle. So that's just what I want to hear from you guys. I want to see what you guys think about it. And I know that for a lot of you, I would recommend is starting out with a budget-end rifle, taking it through a couple of carbine classes, and then moving on to maybe upgrading to a higher-end rifle. Just my basic recommendation there towards the end here. That's my opinion. So thank you for watching. Comment below. Tell me what you guys think. Have a great day. Prepper003 out.